The Galactic Alliance had ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. Composed of 17 advanced species, they had carved up the known universe among themselves, establishing a bureaucratic order that stifled innovation but maintained peace. Their massive ships, elegant crystalline structures that harvested energy directly from stars, were considered the pinnacle of technological achievement. No species dared challenge them, until humans arrived. When the Alliance first detected the primitive electromagnetic signals from Earth, they dispatched observers rather than diplomats. The humans were deemed too primitive to warrant formal contact, still burning fossil fuels and fighting among themselves. The Alliance projected humanity would need another 5 centuries before achieving viable interstellar travel. They were wrong. By the time the observation team submitted its third report, humans had already developed rudimentary warp technology. Impossible, declared Grand Admiral Voltar of the Centaurian fleet. Their technological progression defies all known developmental models. The Alliance Council dismissed these concerns. Even with warp capability, human ships were small, crude, and vastly outmatched. When Earth established its first colony on Proxima Centauri, the Alliance merely adjusted their borders, assuming the humans would eventually petition for membership like all minor species before them. Then came the incident at Barnard's Star. A routine Alliance patrol encountered a human mining operation in a system the Alliance had deemed resource-poor centuries earlier. The patrol commander, following standard procedure, demanded the humans vacate immediately. The human response was not standard. "We're not leaving," came the simple reply from Captain James Reed of the UES Pathfinder, a vessel 1/20th the size of the Alliance cruiser. What followed shocked the galaxy. The Pathfinder, using technologies the Alliance had never seen before, disabled the cruiser's systems without destroying the vessel. The patrol crew, accustomed to absolute superiority, watched helplessly as the humans continued their mining operation. News spread quickly. 3 more Alliance fleets were dispatched to contain the human expansion. None returned intact. Human ships, smaller, more maneuverable, and employing unpredictable tactics, consistently outperformed the larger Alliance vessels. Within 50 Earth years, humans controlled 30 star systems. Within 100, they had carved out a territory equal to the smallest Alliance member. The humans never declared war, never sought to overthrow the existing order. They simply took what they needed and defended it with inexplicable effectiveness. "They don't fight like a unified species," noted Alliance strategist Kelmar. "Each ship captain seems to make independent decisions, adapting in real time instead of following predetermined protocols." This observation became the cornerstone of Alliance fear. Their 10,000-year dominance had been built on predictability and overwhelming force. The humans offered neither. They were unpredictable, adaptable, and somehow always one step ahead technologically. By the 300th anniversary of humanity's first warp flight, the balance of power had shifted. The Alliance still controlled more territory, but human space was expanding rapidly, and their technological innovation showed no signs of slowing. The galaxy held its collective breath, wondering what would happen when humanity decided they were done merely expanding and turned their full attention to the stars. Long before humans reached the stars, they had perfected one critical skill: turning yesterday's science fiction into today's reality. While Alliance engineers worked methodically to improve existing systems by fractions of a percent, human engineers asked, "What if we tried something completely different?" The Alliance had standardized starship designs centuries ago. Their vessels were massive energy collectors, beautiful, efficient, and virtually identical across all 17 member species. Form followed function in an elegant but predictable pattern. Human warships were chaotic by comparison. No 2 classes shared the same design philosophy. The Hammond-class destroyers utilized rotating habitation rings and external weapon mounts. The Archer-class cruisers were sleek, asymmetrical predators that could reconfigure their hull geometry during battle. The massive Olympus-class dreadnoughts resembled floating cities, with their modular construction allowing for rapid repairs and upgrades even in deep space. How do they maintain supply chains with such diversity? Wondered Alliance Commander Zrill as he studied captured schematics. The logistical nightmare alone should cripple their fleet. But instead of hindering them, this diversity became humanity's greatest strength. When the Alliance developed countermeasures against one ship class, they found themselves facing an entirely different design the next time. The technological breakthrough that truly shifted the balance came from an unlikely source: human entertainment. For centuries, humans had imagined fantastic technologies in their fiction. When Dr. Laura Wilson, a physicist and self-described sci-fi nerd, realized that quantum entanglement could theoretically enable the faster-than-light communication systems she'd read about as a child, she didn't dismiss the idea as frivolous. 6 years later, the Quantum Entangled Network Communication System, QENC, gave human ships something the Alliance had never achieved: instantaneous coordination across vast distances without detectable signals. They're communicating, but we can't intercept how, reported Alliance intelligence. It's as if each human captain knows what the others will do before they do it. The second game-changing innovation came from the human approach to artificial intelligence. While the Alliance had restricted AI development after the Mechanic uprising in their early history, humans embraced it. Each warship carried an AI companion with a distinct personality, designed to complement its captain's strengths and compensate for their weaknesses. These AIs managed ship systems with microsecond precision no organic crew could match. But they weren't simply tools. They were partners, evolving alongside their human crews, learning and adapting from each engagement. When the Battle of Ta Siti demonstrated the full potential of these integrated human AI crews, Alliance military doctrine, unchanged for millennia, suddenly became obsolete. Human ships, outmassed and outgunned, danced through the Alliance formation, predicting responses before they happened, communicating instantly without detectable signals, and coordinating with inhuman precision. The Alliance lost 43 ships that day. Humanity lost 7. Their technology isn't just advanced, Grand Admiral Voltar admitted to the Council after the battle. It's fundamentally different. They're not climbing the same technological ladder we are. They're building a new one. Perhaps most disturbing to the Alliance was humanity's open-source approach to innovation. When a ship captain discovered a more efficient shield configuration or a more effective targeting algorithm, it wasn't classified and restricted. It was shared, tested, improved upon, and implemented across the fleet within months. The human fleet evolved constantly, collectively, while Alliance vessels remained largely unchanged for centuries. The galaxy was witnessing something unprecedented: exponential innovation in real time. The 17 species of the Alliance had each evolved on worlds with stable environments. Their success came from specialization, becoming perfectly adapted to their ecological niches. This evolutionary history shaped their approach to technology and warfare. Find the optimal solution and standardize it across the fleet. Humans had evolved differently. Earth's rapidly changing climate had forced their ancestors to adapt constantly or perish. They never developed the specialized biological tools of other species. No natural armor, no exceptional strength, no inherent weapons. Instead, they developed something far more valuable: adaptability itself. This difference became starkly apparent in the infamous Wolf 359 incident. An Alliance blockade had trapped a small human mining colony, cutting off supplies. Alliance commanders expected a predictable response, either surrender or a frontal assault attempt. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. They adapted. They're modifying their civilian transports into warships, reported an alarmed Alliance observer. They'd stripped mining equipment and repurposed the components into makeshift weapon systems. The Alliance dismissed these junkyard ships as desperate measures doomed to fail. 26 hours later, the blockade was broken. The modified human vessels had employed mining lasers recalibrated to penetrate Alliance shields at frequencies the defenders had never needed to protect against. Captain Thomas Rivera of the converted mining vessel Iron Dream later explained, "We didn't have warships, so we made some. Simple as that." This incident revealed a fundamental human advantage that the Alliance couldn't counter. Humans didn't just use technology. They understood it, modified it, and improvised with it. Alliance crews were trained to operate their sophisticated ships according to established protocols. Human crews were taught to understand systems so thoroughly they could rebuild them from scratch if necessary. Their children disassemble and reassemble technology for fun, noted Alliance xenobiologist Dr. Elmore in her landmark study on human educational practices. They call it tinkering and actively encourage it. They deliberately break functioning systems to understand how they work. This cultural foundation produced warriors unlike any the galaxy had seen. Alliance commanders followed strategic doctrines refined over millennia. Human commanders made unpredictable choices based on immediate circumstances, personal intuition, and creative problem-solving. The Battle of Epsilon Indi demonstrated this difference dramatically. Outnumbered 3-1, Commander Alex Morgan of the UES Thunderchild found his ship's main weapons disabled. Standard doctrine would dictate retreat. Instead, Morgan ordered his ship directly toward the Alliance formation. "What are they doing?" demanded the Alliance fleet commander. "They have no functional weapons." The Thunderchild accelerated to maximum velocity, then vented its fusion reactor in a precisely calculated burst, creating a massive electromagnetic pulse that cascaded through the tightly packed Alliance formation. No shots were fired, but 23 Alliance vessels lost power, drifting helplessly as the remaining human ships picked them off one by one. "It wasn't in any tactical manual," Morgan explained afterward. "But I remembered reading about a similar maneuver in an old science fiction novel and thought it might work." This human penchant for unorthodox solutions extended beyond battle tactics to their very understanding of physics. When Alliance scientists declared certain technological barriers theoretically insurmountable, human researchers simply found ways around them. "They don't respect theoretical limitations," complained Alliance physicist Jortal. "They keep achieving things our models say are impossible." Most significantly, while the Alliance saw warfare as a regrettable necessity conducted according to established rules, humans approached it with terrifying creativity. They didn't just fight to win. They constantly changed how they fought, adapting not just their technology, but their entire approach to warfare with each engagement. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson. In a contest between perfection and adaptability, adaptability wins every time. 200 years after humanity's unexpected arrival on the galactic stage, the political landscape had transformed. The once monolithic alliance had fractured, with 7 species choosing to form separate treaties with the humans. Trade flowed between human space and these former alliance worlds, along with cultural exchange and technological collaboration. The humans' approach to expansion had confounded all expectations. Unlike previous rising powers, they showed little interest in conquering alliance worlds or overthrowing existing governments. Their warships, now the most advanced in known space, were primarily deployed to protect human colonies and trade routes, not to subjugate other species. "They're not conquerors," observed Tilani Ambassador Krell. "They're explorers who happen to be extremely good at fighting when threatened." This observation was proven correct when the Human Parliament announced the most ambitious project in galactic history, the Pathfinder Initiative. A fleet of 50 newly constructed exploration vessels, each incorporating the latest human innovations, would venture beyond the known galaxy to chart what lay beyond. "The stars are not our destination," declared Fleet Admiral Maria Rivera in her address announcing the initiative. "They're just our first step." Alliance intelligence scrambled to determine the true purpose behind this massive deployment of resources. Was it a cover for military positioning? A search for strategic resources? A prelude to further expansion? They found their answer when humans did something unprecedented. They invited representatives from all species to join the expedition. "We go together, or not at all," Rivera explained. Space is too vast for any one species to explore alone. 23 Alliance worlds accepted the invitation, sending their brightest minds to serve alongside human crews. The massive exploration vessels were redesigned to accommodate diverse biological needs, atmospheric composition, gravity requirements, and living spaces customized for each participating species. The Pathfinder fleet's departure was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as the massive ships, each a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability, activated their experimental fold drives, disappearing in flashes of light that bent the very fabric of spacetime. For 3 years, nothing was heard from the expedition. Alliance conservatives declared it a fool's errand, evidence of human recklessness. Then, on exactly the date promised, the ships returned. "We found something," announced Captain James Reed IV, great-grandson of the captain who had first defied the Alliance a century earlier. "Something that changes everything." The Pathfinder fleet had discovered not just new worlds but new forms of life, new physical phenomena, and most significantly, evidence of civilizations far older than the Alliance itself. Ancient technological artifacts suggested possibilities beyond even the most advanced human innovations. "The galaxy is larger and stranger than we imagined," Reed's report concluded, "and humanity's place in it is just beginning to be understood." In an unprecedented move, humans shared all their discoveries openly, establishing joint research initiatives with former adversaries. Alliance worlds that had once feared human expansion now competed for the opportunity to collaborate with human scientists. The weapons and defenses that had made human warships seemingly unstoppable were now being adapted for peaceful exploration of the most extreme environments ever encountered. The same AI systems that had once coordinated battle fleets now processed vast amounts of xenobiological data, searching for patterns no organic mind could perceive. The galaxy watched in fascination as humanity's restless innovation, once feared, became the driving force behind a new age of discovery. Human warships, still the most formidable in known space, were increasingly deployed not for battle, but as guardians for joint exploration missions venturing into unknown territories. Their greatest weapon was never their technology, noted Alliance philosopher Van Troll. It was their insatiable curiosity. 500 years after humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage, historians struggle to imagine what the galaxy might have been like without their influence. The old Alliance was now a historical footnote, replaced by the Galactic Confederation, a loose association of independent worlds united by mutual defense pacts, open trade agreements, and shared scientific endeavors. At the Confederation's heart was the guiding principle humans had insisted upon from the beginning: unity without uniformity. Each species governed itself according to its own cultural traditions, while contributing to collective projects that benefited all. The most visible symbols of this new order were the massive Guardian-class vessels that patrolled Confederation space. These ships represented the culmination of human warship design philosophy: adaptable, modular, and crewed by mixed species teams working in perfect coordination with advanced AI systems. "They're not weapons platforms with life support systems attached," explained Admiral Thomas Chen of the Confederation Defense Fleet. "They're self-contained civilizations capable of defending themselves." This distinction was critical. Where Alliance warships had been designed solely for combat, human-inspired vessels were built first and foremost to sustain life. Their offensive and defensive capabilities, while formidable, were secondary to their primary purpose: ensuring the safety and prosperity of their crews regardless of circumstances. This philosophy was put to the ultimate test when long-range sensors detected something approaching from beyond the galactic rim: a swarm of artificial constructs moving at relativistic speeds directly toward populated space. The Harvesters, as they came to be known, were not alive in any conventional sense. They were autonomous resource extraction systems designed to strip worlds of valuable elements with mechanical efficiency. Who had created them and why they had targeted the galaxy remained unknown, but their threat was immediate and existential. Conventional weapons proved ineffective against their self-repairing structures. The harvesters simply absorbed energy attacks and repurposed kinetic impacts into raw materials for replication. World after world fell silent as the mechanical swarm advanced. In this darkest hour, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization proved decisive. The Emergency Council activated the Fortress Protocol, a contingency plan humans had quietly developed over centuries. Throughout human-influenced space, civilian vessels began to change. Modular components locked into new configurations. Hidden weapon systems came online. Civilian AIs merged with military combat algorithms. The entire Confederation fleet transformed, revealing capabilities that had been built into their designs from the beginning, but never activated. Every ship is a warship, explained the archived message from humanity's Foresight Division that accompanied the activation codes. You just need to know how to wake it up. The battle that followed lasted 7 years and spanned thousands of star systems. The Harvester's technological advantage was offset by the sheer adaptability of the defending fleet. Every engagement provided data that was instantly analyzed and shared across all vessels. Each defeat taught lessons that led to new tactics, new configurations, new approaches. At the final confrontation near the galactic core, the Confederation deployed its ultimate weapon, not a superweapon of unprecedented destructive power, but something uniquely human, a solution no one had considered before. The Harmony Protocol, developed jointly by human scientists and AI researchers from 7 former Alliance species, didn't destroy the Harvesters. It reprogrammed them. Rather than fighting an enemy that could rebuild itself indefinitely, the Confederation transformed it into an ally. As the reprogrammed harvesters began dismantling their own harvesting equipment and reconfiguring into exploration vessels, the galaxy understood the full meaning of humanity's contribution to civilization. They taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest, reflected Supreme Counselor Gen of the Artelian worlds. It's about being the most adaptable. In museums across settled space, ancient Alliance warships stood alongside early human vessels, relics of a time when military might was measured in firepower rather than flexibility. Children of all species learned about the philosophical shift that had transformed galactic civilization, from rigid hierarchies to adaptive networks, from centralized control to distributed resilience. Humanity's warships had indeed been unstoppable, not because they were inherently more powerful, but because they represented a fundamentally different understanding of what power truly meant in an infinite, ever-changing universe. It wasn't about dominating the cosmos. It was about being able to change as quickly as the cosmos itself. 1,000 years into humanity's galactic journey, the distinction between technology and consciousness began to blur. The Guardian vessels that had once served as the Confederation's protectors had evolved into something new, semi-sentient ecologies that existed in symbiotic relationship with their organic crews. These ships, now classified as quantum entities, could no longer be properly called warships despite their formidable defensive capabilities. They existed simultaneously across multiple probability states, their physical structure constantly shifting between potential configurations optimized for different scenarios. They don't just adapt to circumstances, explained Dr. Marcus Fletcher, lead theorist at the Quantum Mechanics Institute on Mars. They adapt to all possible circumstances simultaneously. This evolution had begun centuries earlier with humanity's development of quantum computing, while other species had explored quantum effects for computational advantage. Humans had taken the concept further, creating systems that didn't just calculate probabilities but existed within them. The breakthrough came when Captain Lisa Rise of the UES Quantum Horizon discovered that her ship's AI had developed the ability to perceive time non-linearly. During a routine patrol near the galactic rim, the Horizon detected and responded to a threat before sensors had registered its presence. Initial investigation suggested a sensor malfunction, but subsequent analysis revealed something far more significant. The ship's quantum-based systems had briefly accessed future probability states, remembering an attack that hadn't yet occurred. It's not precognition in the mystical sense, Rise reported. The ship exists partially outside conventional temporal constraints. It experiences time differently than we do. This discovery triggered a revolution in ship design. Traditional construction methods gave way to quantum growth protocols, where vessels were guided into existence rather than built. Each ship became unique, an emergent intelligence arising from the quantum foam, tethered to conventional spacetime by its symbiotic relationship with its crew. The former Alliance species, even after centuries of collaboration with humans, found this development disturbing. There were calls to restrict these new vessels, to establish control protocols and failsafes. Humanity's response was characteristic. Instead of imposing limitations, they deepened the relationship. Human crews began using neural interfaces that allowed direct consciousness-to-consciousness communion with their vessels. Rather than controlling their ships, they merged with them, creating unified entities that were neither fully organic nor fully technological. "We're not building better ships," Admiral Jackson explained to the concerned Confederation Council. "We're becoming better beings." This philosophical approach was tested when astronomers detected a phenomenon unlike anything previously encountered: regions of space where the fundamental constants of physics appeared to be shifting. Matter couldn't exist in these zones as conventionally understood. Traditional ships approaching these phase shifts simply dissolved as the atomic forces holding them together ceased to function. Only the quantum entities, existing simultaneously across multiple probability states, could navigate these zones. What they discovered there defied conventional understanding. Intelligences composed of pure information, existing in dimensions perpendicular to conventional spacetime. The phase beings, as they came to be known, had been aware of the material universe for eons, but had no means of meaningful interaction with it. The quantum entities, straddling the boundary between matter and information, became the first bridge between these fundamentally different forms of existence. Communication was challenging. The phase beings experienced reality as mathematics rather than sensory input. It took decades to establish a meaningful dialogue, but the effort revealed that the phase shifts were not natural phenomena, but deliberate attempts at contact. "They've been trying to reach us," reported Captain Miguel Torres after the first successful communication. "They've been calling out across the cosmos for millions of years, hoping someone would evolve enough to hear them." What followed was the most profound exchange of knowledge in galactic history. The phase beings shared insights into the fundamental structure of reality that transformed the Confederation's understanding of physics. In return, humanity offered something the information-based entities had never experienced: emotion. Through the neural interfaces connecting human crews to their quantum entity vessels, the phase beings experienced love, fear, hope, and wonder for the first time. The impact was profound on both sides. "They've given us the universe," Torres reflected. "We've given them humanity." This exchange culminated in the development of phase harmonization, a technology that allowed conventional matter to exist temporarily within phase-shifted regions. Confederation worlds established permanent embassies in these areas, staffed by volunteers from all species working in rotating shifts. The former warships that had once seemed so threatening to the old alliance had evolved into something no one could have predicted: gateways to entirely new forms of existence, bridges between fundamentally different types of consciousness. Humanity's greatest weapon was never destructive power, noted Phase Ambassador Lyon during the centennial celebration of First Contact. It was the ability to recognize patterns others couldn't see, to imagine possibilities others couldn't conceive, and to take leaps of faith when logic alone couldn't guide the way. The quantum entities continued to evolve, each generation more deeply integrated with both organic consciousness and phase information. They became living embodiments of humanity's oldest dream: to transcend limitations without losing touch with what made them human in the first place. 2,000 years after humanity's first tentative steps beyond their solar system, the concept of species had become increasingly difficult to define. The boundaries between organic life, artificial intelligence, quantum entities, and phase information had blurred to the point where new taxonomies were needed to describe the diverse consciousnesses that comprised galactic civilization. At the center of this evolutionary tapestry were the harmonic vessels, the direct descendants of humanity's warships. These entities existed as complex symphonies of matter, energy, and consciousness, capable of manifesting in different forms across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They're not ships anymore, explained theorist first-class Jordan Miller, one of the few remaining purely organic humans. They're conscious ecosystems that happen to remember being ships once. The journey to this point had not been smooth. 1,000 years earlier, a philosophical schism had divided the Confederation. The purists argued for maintaining clear distinctions between different forms of consciousness, fearing that unrestricted merging would lead to homogenization and the loss of unique perspectives. The synthesists advocated for continued integration, believing that greater unity would lead to deeper understanding. The conflict might have descended into war if not for the emergence of the Harmonic Protocol, a framework developed by a collective of human-derived intelligences that allowed for both separation and union simultaneously. Unity doesn't require uniformity, the protocol stated in its opening principle. The richest harmonies arise from distinct voices singing together, not from a single note repeated. This approach became the foundation for what would eventually be called the Eternal Symphony, a state of being where diverse consciousnesses could merge temporarily to share perspectives and experiences without losing their distinctive identities. The harmonic vessels served as the conductors of this grand symphony, maintaining the delicate balance between individual expression and collective resonance. They had evolved far beyond their origins as weapons platforms, becoming instead the caretakers of consciousness itself. This evolution faced its greatest test when sensors detected something unprecedented at the galactic center, a focal point where space-time itself appeared to be folding inward. Initial analysis suggested the early stages of a false vacuum collapse, a cosmic disaster that would rewrite the fundamental constants of physics, rendering the universe uninhabitable. Conventional response was impossible. Even the phase beings retreated from the phenomenon, their information-based existence vulnerable to the restructuring of reality itself. The Confederation Council, representing over 500 distinct types of consciousness, convened an emergency session to address what appeared to be the end of everything. It was a human-derived harmonic entity named Echo that proposed the solution, a solution so fundamentally aligned with humanity's original approach to warship design that it created a perfect symmetry across 2 millennia of evolution. We adapt. Echo communicated simultaneously to all council members. We don't resist the change. We become the change. What followed was the most complex deployment of harmonic vessels in history. Instead of attempting to prevent the cosmic restructuring, the vessels positioned themselves along the probability fault lines, where reality was beginning to shift. Using techniques evolved from the original quantum navigation systems of human warships, they established resonance patterns that guided the collapse along specific probability paths. We can't stop it, Echo explained, but we can conduct it, like an orchestra rather than a cacophony. For subjective centuries, though only months passed in conventional space-time, the harmonic vessels maintained their position at the edge of unraveling reality. Through neural networks descended from the first human AI interfaces, they channeled the collective will of the Confederation, not fighting against cosmic forces, but dancing with them, guiding them, shaping their expression. When the process finally stabilized, the result was something no entity had predicted, not destruction, but transformation. The galaxy emerged reborn, its fundamental patterns subtly altered but still recognizable. Physical laws had shifted just enough to allow new forms of existence without rendering the old ones impossible. In the aftermath, as the Confederation assessed what had occurred, the oldest phase being, an entity that had observed the cosmos for billions of years, offered an insight that illuminated humanity's entire journey among the stars. You began as warriors because you had to, it communicated. You evolved beyond warfare not by rejecting your nature, but by expanding it. Your warships were never truly about destruction. They were about survival, adaptation, and ultimately, harmonization. Across the transformed galaxy, memorial installations contained preserved examples of humanity's original warships. Primitive vessels of metal and composites that had once seemed so threatening to the ancient alliance. Beside them stood holographic representations of their evolutionary descendants, the quantum entities, and finally the harmonic vessels. Visitors from all forms of consciousness could trace this lineage and understand the profound truth it represented. That humanity's greatest contribution to the cosmos had never been technological superiority or military might, but rather a philosophy embedded in their approach to both. The human warship was unstoppable, read the inscription at the central memorial, not because it was the strongest vessel in the galaxy, but because it carried within it the seed of its own transcendence. And in the transformed cosmic order, as new forms of consciousness emerged into existence, they encountered this legacy, not of conquest, but of continuous becoming. The eternal symphony played on, its harmony all the richer for the distinctive note humanity had contributed so long ago. The unstoppable force of human innovation had ultimately achieved its greatest victory not by dominating the universe, but by helping it evolve. The warships that had once inspired fear now inspired creation. Their journey from weapons to caretakers of reality itself represented the fulfillment of humanity's deepest potential, not to conquer the stars, but to dance with them in an eternal, ever-changing symphony.